Commander Kim Hana gripped the bridge railing as something impossible happened right before her eyes. The massive asteroid that should have crushed their ship like an egg was passing through them like they were made of air. Her stomach dropped as she watched chunks of space rock float harmlessly through the control room, through her crew, through everything. "What the hell is happening?" she whispered, but her voice sounded strange, hollow somehow. Park Jinwoo, her chief engineer, was frantically pressing buttons at his station. His hands were shaking as he turned to face her. "Commander, the life support systems are going crazy. The readings don't make sense. It's like the ship thinks we're not even here anymore." Before Hana could respond, Communications Officer Lee Soman looked up from her console with panic in her eyes. "Ma'am, I've been sending distress signals for the past 10 minutes, every frequency, every channel. But the signals, they're not bouncing back. They're not hitting anything. It's like they're just disappearing into space." Dr. Choi Minho, the ship's brilliant physicist, was running between different instrument panels like a man possessed. His usually neat hair was messy from running his hands through it. "Commander, this is impossible according to everything we know about physics. We're occupying the same space as solid matter, but we're not colliding with it. We're like ghosts." The word ghost sent a chill through everyone on the bridge. Hana had served in space for 15 years, seen strange things that would make most people question reality, but nothing like this. She watched as Ensign Kim Young-ho tried to pick up a datapad from his station. His hand passed right through. "Try again," Hana ordered, hoping desperately that it was just some kind of hallucination. Young-ho tried 3 more times. Each time his hand went through the solid object like it wasn't there. The color drained from his face as he looked at his own hands like they belonged to someone else. Then the proximity alarm started screaming. On the main screen, they could see 3 Vorthan patrol ships approaching fast. The Vorthans were known for their advanced sensors that could detect a whisper in the void of space. If anyone could find them, it would be these alien trackers. "Thank God," Lee Soman breathed. "They'll see us. They'll help us figure this out." But as they watched, the Vorthan ships flew right through their position. The alien ships passed through the meridian like it was empty space. On the communication channels, they could hear the Vorthan pilots talking to each other in their clicking language. Dr. Choi had learned some Vorthan during his academy days. His face went pale as he translated. "They're saying there's nothing here. Their sensors show completely empty space. No ship, no debris, no energy signatures, nothing." The bridge fell silent except for the humming of systems that shouldn't have been working if they weren't really there. Hana felt like she was falling into a dark pit with no bottom. 200 people under her command, and they had just vanished from the universe. Park Jinwoo's voice cracked as he spoke. "Commander, the life support is flickering on and off. The systems can't figure out if we exist or not. 1 minute, the air recyclers are working. The next minute, they're not detecting any crew to support." Lee Soman was frantically trying every communication method she knew. "I'm sending messages on every frequency known to humanity and half the alien races in this sector. But it's like shouting into a black hole. The signals just vanish." Dr. Choi was scribbling equations on his tablet, his mind racing through possibilities. "Commander, I think I know what happened. That artifact we were studying, the one from the architect ruins, it activated when we got too close. The architects were an ancient race that disappeared millions of years ago, but their technology was incredibly advanced." "What kind of technology does this?" Hana demanded. "Dimensional shifting," Choi said quietly. "They used it to hide their ships from enemies. But if my calculations are right, we're not just hidden. We're caught between dimensions. We exist, but not in the same reality as everything else." Around the bridge, crew members were trying to touch controls, pick up objects, interact with anything physical. Nothing worked. They could see everything, hear everything, but they couldn't affect anything in the real world. The panic was spreading, fast. Hana could hear voices throughout the ship as crew members discovered their situation. Some were crying, others were angry, many were just confused and scared. These were trained space explorers, people who had signed up for danger and adventure, but nothing had prepared them for becoming living ghosts. "How long do we have?" Hana asked the question everyone was thinking. Dr. Choi looked at his readings and swallowed hard. If the dimensional drift continues at this rate, maybe days, maybe less, we're being pulled deeper into whatever space exists between realities. Eventually, we'll be so far from normal space that we'll never find our way back. Hana looked around at her crew, at the people who trusted her to bring them home safely. They were alive, conscious, thinking, feeling human beings. But to the rest of the universe, they had simply stopped existing. The Meridian had become a ghost ship, and they were all ghosts aboard it. Dr. Choi Minho hadn't slept in 36 hours. His eyes were bloodshot and his hands shook as he pored over ancient architect texts and quantum physics equations. Empty, coffee cups surrounded his workstation like a fortress of caffeine addiction. Every few minutes he would mutter something under his breath and scribble new calculations on his tablet. "Doctor, you need to rest," said his assistant Young Minji, but her voice sounded as tired as he felt. "Can't rest," Choi mumbled, not looking up from his work. 200 lives depend on figuring this out, including yours and mine. The artifact sat in the center of his lab, looking innocent enough. It was about the size of a basketball, made of some unknown metal that seemed to shift colors when you weren't looking directly at it. 3 days ago, it had been just another mysterious piece of ancient technology. Now it was their prison warden. Down in the mess hall, things were falling apart fast. Crew members sat in groups, some crying quietly, others arguing loudly about what they should do. Food was running low because the replicators couldn't decide if they were feeding real people or ghosts. Sometimes the machines worked. Sometimes they didn't. Petty Officer Han Sulgi was trying to calm down a group of younger crew members who were having panic attacks. "Listen to me," she said in her most soothing voice. "We're still alive. We're still breathing. That means there's hope." "Hope? For what?" snapped Engineer Third Class Bae Taehyung. "We're ghosts. We can't touch anything, can't contact anyone, can't even eat half the time. We're going to die floating between realities like some cosmic joke." Captain Yoon Dae-ho walked into the mess hall at that moment. He was a tall man with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much, but his presence still commanded respect. Even in their impossible situation, people straightened up when he entered a room. "Nobody is dying on my ship," he said firmly. "Not today, not tomorrow, not until we've exhausted every possible option." His voice carried the kind of authority that made people want to believe him, even when everything seemed hopeless. "But Captain," said Communications Officer Lim Hyunwoo, "we can't even send a message to our families. They think we're dead already." Yoon's expression softened slightly. He understood their pain because he felt it too. Somewhere back on Earth, his wife was probably wondering why his scheduled check-in was 3 days late. His daughter would be asking when Daddy was coming home from his space mission. "Dr. Choi is working around the clock to understand what happened to us," the captain said. "Until he finds an answer, we maintain discipline and we maintain hope. That's an order." Back in the lab, Choi was having a breakthrough. The ancient architect texts were written in a language that was part mathematics, part poetry, and completely alien. But he was starting to understand the pattern. The architects didn't just disappear, he told Young Minji excitedly. They hid themselves. This device was designed to shift entire fleets into dimensional space during wars. It was their ultimate defense system. "So how do we turn it off?" Minji asked. Choi's face fell. "That's the problem. According to these texts, the architects used it as a one-way trip. Once you activate it, you become permanent guardians of the dimensional barrier. They chose to sacrifice themselves to protect their civilization from something called the Void. Hunters. Meanwhile, throughout the ship, crew members were discovering the cruel reality of their situation. Every time someone tried to interact with the physical world, it drained energy from all of them. Mechanic Park Sun-ho learned this the hard way when he tried to repair a broken console. The effort left him unconscious for 6 hours and made everyone else feel weak and dizzy. "It's like we're connected," explained Medical Officer Shin Ji-won as she checked on Sun-ho. "When one of us tries to force interaction with normal reality, it pulls energy from our entire dimensional existence." The ship's sensors showed they were drifting deeper into whatever space existed between realities. Every hour, the readings became more distorted. The stars outside looked strange now, like they were viewing them through thick water or warped glass. Dr. Choi called a meeting in the main conference room. His discovery was both fascinating and terrifying. The architects didn't just hide from their enemies, he explained to the senior staff. They became something else. Guardians who could observe both dimensions but couldn't return to normal space. How long do we have? Captain Yoon asked the question everyone dreaded. Based on our rate of dimensional drift, maybe 4 days before we're too deep to ever find our way back. But here's the worst part. Every time we try to interact with reality, we speed up the process. It's like each attempt pushes us further away from the world we know. The room was silent as everyone absorbed this information. They were trapped in a race against time, and every effort to escape only made things worse. Commander Kim Hana spoke up from her seat. So we're becoming like the architects, permanent observers who can see everything but touch nothing. Unless we find another way, Choi said quietly. But the text suggests the architects accepted their fate because they found a greater purpose in their new existence. Outside the ship, reality continued to exist without them. Ships passed through their space, planets spun on their axes, and life went on as if the Meridian and her crew had never existed at all. The first time it happened was completely by accident. Navigator O'Hyeri was monitoring space traffic when she spotted a Kalari colony ship under attack by 3 pirate vessels. The pirates were closing in for the kill, their weapons charging for what would be the final blow against the defenseless. Civilians. We have to do something. Hyeri whispered, her heart breaking as she watched hundreds of innocent families about to die. We can't, replied pilot Kang Minsu from his station, but his voice was filled with the same anguish. We're ghosts, remember? We can't touch anything. But as they watched the pirates prepare to fire, something strange happened. Hyeri felt a surge of desperate emotion, a need to help so powerful it made her chest ache. Suddenly, the Meridian flickered into normal space for just a few seconds. Long enough for their presence to appear on the pirates' sensors. The pirate captain's voice crackled over the radio, speaking in broken galactic standard. What the hell? Where did that ship come from? Sensors show nothing, then something, then nothing again. The pirates were so confused and spooked by the ghost ship appearing out of nowhere that they fled, thinking it was some kind of advanced military trap. The Kalari colony ship escaped safely, never knowing how close they had come to death. Back on the Meridian, the crew was buzzing with excitement and confusion. Did we just actually help someone? Asked Engineer Park Jinwoo, hardly believing what had happened. Dr. Choi was frantically checking his instruments. The emotional intensity must have somehow anchored us briefly to normal reality. When we felt that desperate need to help, it gave us just enough connection to appear on their sensors. Captain Yoon gathered his senior staff immediately. If we can control this ability, we might be able to do some good while we're stuck in this condition. But it wasn't that simple. The effort had drained them all. Half the crew needed medical attention from Medical Officer Shin Ji-won, and their dimensional stability had decreased significantly. They were paying a heavy price for even brief contact with reality. The second incident happened 3 days later. Communications Officer Lee Salmon picked up a distress call from a mining station in the Vega sector. A massive asteroid was on a collision course, and their evacuation ships were malfunctioning. They have 6 hours before impact, Salmon reported. 3,000 miners and their families. This time, Commander Kim Hana made the decision deliberately. We're going to try to help them. Navigator Hyeri plotted a course to the mining station, while pilot Minsu pushed their spectral engines beyond safe limits. The ship groaned and shuddered as it moved between dimensions, reality bending around them like twisted metal. When they arrived at the mining station, Hyeri focused all her emotional energy on the desperate families below. The Meridian flickered into existence just long enough to transmit a warning message and detailed evacuation plans that Dr. Choi had calculated. The miners received the ghostly transmission with a mixture of terror and gratitude. Some thought they were hallucinating from stress. Others believed they had been visited by spirits of dead spacers. But they followed the evacuation plan, and all 3,000 people escaped before the asteroid hit. Word of the ghost ship began, spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. Different species had different names for it. The Theks called it the Watcher in the Void. The Zephyrians named it the Ship of Lost Souls. Humans who heard the stories simply called it the Ghost of Terra. Some alien cultures saw the meridian as a good omen, a sign that the spirits of brave spacers were watching over travelers. Others feared it as a harbinger of doom, believing that seeing the ghost ship meant death was coming. But for the crew of the meridian, each intervention was becoming more difficult. Navigator Hyeri was losing weight and having trouble concentrating. Pilot Minsu's hands shook constantly from the strain of pushing their engines beyond normal limits. "We're burning ourselves out," Dr. Choi warned during a medical briefing. "Each time we force contact with reality, we lose more of our dimensional stability. At this rate, we'll completely fade away in weeks instead of months." Yet they couldn't stop themselves. When sensor operator Kwon Ji-hoon detected a passenger liner under attack by raiders, they intervened again. When they spotted a research station about to be hit by a solar flare, they appeared long enough to warn the scientists. Each rescue became a legend among spacers. Bar stories told of a mysterious ship that appeared during disasters, helped save lives, then vanished like morning mist. Some claimed to have seen its ghostly hull glowing with an otherworldly light. Others swore they heard human voices speaking in ancient Korean over the radio before the ship disappeared. The crew began to understand that their curse was becoming something bigger than their personal tragedy. Mechanic An Jinho said it best during one of their evening meetings. "Maybe we're not supposed to find our way home. Maybe we're supposed to become something else." Navigator Hyeri had started keeping a log of their interventions. 17 successful rescues, she reported. "We've saved over 12,000 lives in the past month. At the cost of our own existence," added Medical Officer Shin Ji-won grimly. "Half the crew is showing signs of dimensional fade. We're literally disappearing bit by bit." But when the next distress call came in, they didn't hesitate. The Meridian had become more than a ghost ship. It was becoming a guardian angel, watching over the galaxy from the spaces between realities, saving lives that would otherwise be lost. The crew was transforming from lost explorers into something legend would remember forever. Medical Officer Shin Ji-won walked through the corridors of the Meridian with a heavy heart. In her hand, she carried a tablet showing medical readings that would have been impossible to believe just months ago. Half her crew was literally fading away. "Commander," she said quietly as she entered the bridge, "we need to talk." "Commander." Kim Hana looked up from her station. Even she looked different now, slightly translucent around the edges like a person made of morning fog. "How bad is it, Ji-won?" Petty Officer Nam Subin can barely hold solid form for more than an hour at a time. Engineer Ko Yejin collapsed yesterday and hasn't been able to manifest since. We're losing people not to death but to nothing. They're just disappearing into the space between realities. The bridge crew fell silent. They all knew this day was coming, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that hurt worse than any physical pain. Dr. Choi Minho looked up from his workstation, exhaustion written across his ghostly features. "I've been working on a solution," he said quietly. "I think I found a way to reverse the process." Everyone turned to stare at him. For weeks, he had been telling them it was impossible. "The artifact," he continued, "if we destroy it at exactly the right moment, we can create a dimensional backlash that will snap us back into normal space. All of us instantly." Navigator Hyeri felt hope surge in her chest for the first time in months. "That's incredible. How do we do it?" Choi's expression grew somber. "That's the problem. The process requires perfect timing and exact positioning. We'd need to be at the artifact's original location, and we can only do it once. If we try and fail, we'll be torn apart by dimensional forces." "So we go back to where we found it," said pilot Kang Min-soo. "We destroy the thing and get our lives back." "It's not that simple," Choi replied. The energy required to destroy the artifact would completely drain our dimensional existence. We'd have maybe 30 minutes in normal space before the process kills us all. Captain Yoon Daeho leaned forward in his chair. 30 minutes to send messages home to say goodbye to our families. That might be enough. But before anyone could respond, Communications Officer Lee So-man's face went pale as she monitored the galaxy-wide communication networks. Sir, you need to hear this. I'm picking up military communications from across known space. She put the transmissions on the main speakers. The voices were speaking different alien languages, but the translation software painted a terrifying picture. The hegemony, a coalition of militaristic alien species, was preparing for a massive offensive against the Free Worlds Alliance. The war that diplomats had been trying to prevent for years was finally beginning. How many people are we talking about? Commander Hana asked, though she dreaded the answer. So-man's voice shook as she ran the calculations. The Alliance has over 800 billion citizens across their member worlds. The hegemony controls sectors with nearly 1 trillion inhabitants. This won't be a small conflict, Commander. This will be genocide on a galactic scale. Dr. Choi was already working at his console, his mind racing through possibilities. With our ghostly abilities, we could appear at key military installations, disrupt their communications, maybe even sabotage their weapons before they could launch the first attacks. But that would mean... Navigator Hieri couldn't finish the sentence. It would mean staying as ghosts forever, Medical Officer Shin completed, using all our remaining energy to prevent the war instead of saving ourselves. The bridge fell into heavy silence. Outside the windows, stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that the choice being made on this ghost ship would determine the fate of countless civilizations. Commander Hana looked around at her crew, her family, really, after all they had been through together. I won't make this decision for everyone. This affects all 200 of us. Within an hour, every crew member who was still able to maintain solid form had gathered in the main assembly hall. Those who were too fated to appear physically joined. Through the ship's internal communication system, Captain Yoon addressed them all. Dr. Choi has found a way to bring us home. One chance, one shot at returning to normal space and seeing our families again. But we've also discovered that the galaxy is about to tear itself apart in a war that could kill trillions. He paused, letting the weight of the choice settle on everyone's shoulders. We can save ourselves, or we can try to save the galaxy. We can't do both. Engineering Chief Park Jinwoo was the first to speak. My daughter just started university. I've missed her graduation, her first job interview. I want to see her again more than anything. His voice broke slightly. But how many other daughters will die if this war happens? One by one, crew members began to speak. Some talked about family members they missed. Others spoke about the people they had already saved during their months as ghosts. All of them understood the impossible nature of their choice. Petty Officer Han Selgi, barely visible as she flickered in and out of existence, managed to whisper, "We became ghosts by accident, but maybe we can choose to become guardians on purpose." When the vote was called, it was unanimous. All 200 crew members chose to remain as spirits, to use their ghostly existence to prevent a galactic war rather than save themselves. Medical Officer Shin Ji-won wiped tears from her eyes as she looked around at her crewmates. They were all volunteers for this impossible mission, but now they were volunteers for something much bigger. "We're really doing this," she said softly. "We're choosing to become legends instead of going home." Commander Hana nodded, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders one final time. "Then let's make sure the legend is worth the sacrifice." The plan was madness, but it was their only chance to save the galaxy. Communications Officer Lee So-man had spent 3 sleepless days working with Dr. Choi to figure out how to split their ghostly existence across multiple locations simultaneously. The theory was simple. If they were already existing between dimensions, maybe they could exist in multiple places at once. "I've never attempted anything like this," Lee admitted as she prepared the consciousness-splitting protocol. "We could lose ourselves completely, scattered across space with no way to come back together." Commander Kim Hana looked around at her crew one last time. They were all so faded now that she could see through most of them to the walls behind. "We're already lost," she said quietly. "At least this way, we're lost for a reason." The process began at exactly 0800 ship time. Lee activated the dimensional splitter while Dr. Choi monitored their life signs. One by one, crew members began to flicker and divide, their consciousness spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a cosmic pond. Navigator Oh Hieri found herself materializing in the war room of Hegemony High Command, where alien generals were planning their first strike. The shock on their faces when a ghostly human woman appeared at their strategy table was worth the pain of existing in multiple places at once. "Your opening attack will fail," she told them in perfect hegemony standard, her voice echoing with otherworldly authority. "The Alliance knows about your secret fleet movements. Proceed with this war and you will lose everything." The generals tried to grab their weapons, but their hands passed right through her ghostly form. She showed them tactical displays that revealed how their supposedly secret troop movements had been detected, how their surprise attacks would become deadly traps. Meanwhile, pilot Kang Minsu appeared in the cockpit of the Alliance's flagship dreadnought, startling Admiral Vexitar so badly that the alien dropped his command tablet. "The Hegemony's first wave will target your civilian evacuation." "Krotz," Minsu warned, his form flickering like a hologram with a bad connection. "They're counting on you evacuating the border worlds. Don't take the bait." Across the galaxy, 200 ghostly crew members were appearing at critical locations. Engineer Park Jin-woo manifested in ammunition depots, showing workers how their weapons would malfunction at crucial moments. Medical Officer Shin Ji-won appeared in hospital ships, warning doctors about chemical weapons that would be deployed. But it was what happened at the peace negotiations on Centauri Station that truly changed everything. Captain Yoon Dae-ho and Commander Hana appeared together in the middle of the diplomatic summit, their ghostly forms visible to representatives from dozens of species. "We are the crew of the Terran vessel." "Meridian," Hana announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "We have died to bring you this message. The war you're about to fight will destroy everything you're trying to protect." The diplomats were terrified, but they couldn't look away as the ghostly humans began to show them visions of what the war would look like. Not strategic maps or casualty estimates, but real images of burning worlds, refugee children crying for their parents, entire civilizations reduced to ash and memory. Communications Officer Lee, her consciousness stretched across 17 different locations, was accessing military computers and exposing the false flag operations that were supposed to justify the war. She revealed how arms dealers were selling weapons to both sides, how certain politicians were being paid to encourage conflict. The coordinated haunting lasted for 6 hours. 6 hours of ghostly humans appearing at every important military, political, and diplomatic location in known space. They exposed lies, revealed secrets, and showed everyone the true cost of the war they were about to start. Dr. Choi, manifesting in research stations and universities, shared intelligence about biological weapons and planetary bombardment plans that would have killed billions. His ghostly form flickered as he handed over data that proved certain species were being manipulated into conflict. When it was over, the Meridian crew had changed the course of galactic history. The war was called off not because of any single revelation, but because the accumulated weight of truth had made it impossible to continue the lies that wars require. But the cost was everything they had left of their humanity. One by one, the crew members stopped being able to maintain individual consciousness. Their personalities began to blend together, becoming something larger and less human than they had been. Navigator Hieri was the last to fade, her final words echoing across the ship's communication system. "Tell our families we chose to become Starlight." The Meridian itself began to change, transforming from a ghost ship into something made of pure energy and memory. It became a guardian spirit that could appear anywhere in the galaxy where help was needed. Years passed, then decades. Spacers throughout known space began telling stories of the ghostly ship that appeared during disasters. Sometimes it would warn colonies about incoming asteroid strikes. Other times it would guide lost ships to safety, or appear to comfort dying, cruise in the void between stars. The stories always ended the same way. The ship would appear when all hope was lost. Help would arrive in impossible ways, and then it would vanish like morning mist, leaving behind only the memory of voices speaking. In an ancient Earth language called Korean, children on 100 different worlds grew up hearing bedtime stories about Terra's ghost ship. The Meridian became more than a legend. It became proof that some people would choose to sacrifice everything to protect others, even people they had never met. In the space academies of every major civilization, cadets learned about the crew who gave up their chance to go home so that others could keep theirs. The lesson was always the same. True heroism isn't about being fearless or strong. It's about choosing to do what's right even when it costs you everything. Meridian and her crew had become eternal guardians of the galaxy, watching from the spaces between reality, appearing whenever someone needed hope in the darkness. They were no longer human, but they had become something better, proof that the human spirit could transcend even death itself to protect the innocent. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the stars seemed especially bright, sensitive souls across the galaxy could hear faint voices singing old Korean lullabies, carried on solar winds from a ship that chose to become legend rather than history.